So I'm Jen Crane. I'm the Master's in Counseling Psychology Program Chair. And this is Kale Cerrone. She's core faculty. So she's my number one, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our program today. But first I wanted to talk to you about what a therapist is and what a therapist isn't. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. So when I'm out there in the world, and I am maybe standing in line for, something, I'm at a party and there's people that are there that I haven't met, or I'm on an airplane, people inevitably always ask me, what do you do for a living? Right? And it's a really important thing in this culture. We define ourselves by who we are, what we do for a living, and a lot of people define us by that too, and they project onto us some of those things. Good, bad, all of that. So when I tell people I'm a marriage and family therapist, or I prefer psychotherapist because it's more inclusive, I usually get one of two responses. So that first response is like, whoa, are you psychoanalyzing me? I shouldn't have told you all those things that I just told you. I'm so embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Are you judging me? Right? So the first preconceived notion is that as therapists, we are judging you. Like we know something, we sit up here on our high horse and we are judging you, right? The second response is the opposite, right? That person kind of goes into me or comes closer to me and goes, oh, you're a therapist. Oh my gosh, let me tell you about my sister. She's such a wackadoo. I can't believe what she said to me last week, right? Oh, and by the way, do you write prescriptions for medication? So there's that person who thinks we're going to be there to give them free advice right there on the spot, right? Free therapy. Or we might be able to whip out our prescription pad and write them a prescription for Xanax or whatever it is that they want. So it's none of those things. Being a therapist is none of those things. We don't give advice. We don't write prescriptions for medication. And we certainly don't judge. Okay? So when you're in therapy school, you actually learn a few stances for how to do therapy. Some people call it therapeutic savviness. Some people, I've heard, people maybe call it Jedi mind tricks, where we learn the art of compassion. We learn the art of empathy, the empathetic stance. It's like therapy 101. And I know my family noticed that as soon as I entered therapy school after 6 weeks, I was asking them all like, how does that make you feel? Right? Drove them crazy. Around Thanksgiving time, they're just like, will you please just not talk at the dinner table? And we learn listening, right? The art of listening. Now that is something that we don't often get taught in this culture. We assume we all know how to listen, right? But there are some very, very specific things about listening that are very different when you're sitting in a room and you are the one in a state of presence for your client, right? And the last one is therapeutic presence, right? Really and truly being present for a client. That takes a lot of training. That's why we have 3,000 hours in the state of California that you have to be supervised under to learn all of these skills so that you can ethically and legally be in an objective party, third voice of reason stance in the room, okay? And what do I mean by that, the objective party, third voice of reason? So if you experience an intense emotion, let's take a few for example here. Anger, anxiety, fear, sadness. What do those emotions feel like in your body? Can you remember, just think about that if you remember ever feeling one of those emotions. They can be really intense, right? Those emotions can hijack us and interfere with our functioning, yeah? What about joy and love? How do those emotions feel? Those feel pretty good, huh? Don't eat, don't sleep, especially like I hear about this a lot in the therapy office. Clients are first dating and they're just so in love and so in limerence and they don't eat or sleep, but they don't really seem to see that as cause for alarm, as interfering with their functioning, because they feel so good. Yeah? So one of the things you learn is how to take a transpersonal stance in that third-party objective voice of reason, how to transcend your emotions and how they're hijacking you. So it's kind of the ability to step outside of yourself and look at yourself and be like, wow, I'm really angry right now. It's really intense. I'm sure there's a reason to be angry, but I can observe myself being angry, and I can also keep my frontal lobe online so I can use my reason and my rationale so that I can make some better choices, right? So these are all some of the skills you learn going to therapy school. And they're really helpful out there in the world, too. They're really helpful for clients to be able to learn some of those skills for the first time as well. So what else do therapists do? We listen to our clients. We listen for our clients. We listen with our clients. They are always in charge. They are always the ones in the room leading the session. What we do is we learn tracking skills. We learn how to hold up the mirror for our client so that we can sort of mirror back to them what it is that they're saying, what it is that they're thinking. And some of them have, really negative stories or really negative beliefs about themselves. I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm never going to make anything of myself, that really harm them and interfere with their capacity to be in the world that they really want to. So it's such an honor for me as a therapist to be able to sit in a room with a client, and maybe I'm the first person they have ever told a traumatic story to, or something that happened to them. And to be able to hold that state of therapeutic presence, empathy, listening, not judgment, right? Not advice. And to be able to help heal them. That's transformative. That's like what I call transforming humanity. And actually, it starts with me. I remember when I first learned the art of self-compassion in therapy school. It was much easier to give it towards other people. I remember feeling compassionate towards my family and my friends. But to turn that towards myself, that was a lot more difficult. I had to retrain my mind to do that. And I had to practice over and over and over again. And learning how to do that essentially is a spiritual practice. Being a therapist is a spiritual practice. It is a transpersonal stance that you have to call yourself back to, often sometimes. More often than not some days, depends on how much sleep you had, what's going on in your life, what you're managing, and what intensity is coming at you, right? You may be triggered by something in the room. Maybe somebody reminds you of your angry dad or your cold mother, whatever it is. And you have to learn how to manage that as you do the work. It's like essentially you learn to get yourself out of the way so you can really be there and be present. So, and I hope one day when I meet somebody out in public and they learn what I do, that they say, wow, how amazing. What courage you have to be able to sit with people and hold their pain and be there for them and help them versus assuming that I'm judging or that I'm going to give them advice. So that's what I feel like it is to be a therapist. And if you want to come to Sofia and learn those skills, even if you don't go into being a therapist, you have these skills for life. Once you turn them on, it's really hard to turn them off. Once you start meditating, once you start inviting that therapeutic presence, that observing ego, they don't turn off that easily. Maybe little moments you can go unconscious, but anyways. Do you want to add anything to the experience of being a therapist, or do you want to?
I think you covered it really well. I want to maybe talk a little bit about marriage and family therapy and clinical counseling, because there are a lot of different types of therapists in the world, and our program trains all these skills that Jennifer talked about, but we also go to 2 specific licenses. So marriage and family therapists work with people in relationship with themselves, in relationship with their family, in relationship with their school or work or their friends. And we're really focused on how people relate to others and how systems around people affect what's going on in the person or the family. And often marriage and family therapists will work with more than one person. We'll work with the parent and the child, or we'll work with the couple or the relationship unit. Or if we're working with a family that's been affected by divorce, we might see the parent and child together, parent A and child one week, and parent B and child the next week, so that we can, and then we might see the parents together to help them work on their co-parenting relationship post-divorce. So we're often working with relationships. So that's marriage and family therapy really focuses on those kinds of skills and holding that kind of presence that Jennifer talked about, not just for the person, but for the whole system that they sit in, or systems that they sit in, and paying attention to that. Clinical counseling is a little different. A lot of the skills are the same. Clinical counseling really takes a human development approach. So we're looking at how people grow over the lifespan and also about how they work in the world, and really ties in with some of the things that David talked about when he spoke about the MBA program, because we're really looking at how people develop themselves and then how they use that in their life, in their career, how they bring their own personal presence out into whatever they're doing in the world. So that's clinical counseling. It's a little bit different focus. Clinical counselors can see families if they have the right training. Marriage and family therapists can do that developmental piece if they have the right training, but the two licenses do have these fundamentally different ways of being. And because of that, in our program we have two concentrations. You can take either the MFT concentration or the clinical counseling concentration, or you can take both.
It's only 6 more units.
It's only, yeah, it's not a huge difference, actually.
Yeah. And then you're ready to go kind of a little bit more mobile with that, because some other states have only LPCC, and some states have, do any states only have MFT now?
Actually, all states have all of them now, but
Okay.
Depending on what state you're in, one license may be better than the other.
Right, because of the educational requirements. But here at Sofia, you actually can meet both educational requirements for both tracks together. Yeah.
And we have both a residential format, which is 2 years, and a distance learning format where people come here twice a year for an intensive, and the rest is online. So if you're in our low residency format, it takes 3 to 4 years, but you don't have to live in the Bay Area to do the low residency. You just have to be able to come here twice a year for those intensive classes where you're in person with your faculty and your cohort, and then you go online with your cohort for the rest of the program. We've been delivering that format now since 2010, and it's really robust and really the online instruction is very high quality.
And that's unique to Sofia, right? The online?
There are some other programs that are online, but what's unique about us is we have this both. So about 35% of the program is in person, and about 65% is online, if you do the low residency part. If you do the residential part, probably about 80 to 90% of your program is going to be in person. You might have a couple of online courses. And the residential program is faster. It's a full-time program. It's really hard to work when you're in the residential program, but you get out in 8 quarters.
So that would be how many years roughly? 8 quarters? It's just 2 weeks.
For residential program, if you do the program full-time, it's 8 quarters, so 2 years.
The fastest.
That's yeah.
Yes.
And then for the low residency program, it's considered to be a part-time program. So it's expected that you would be able to work at least half-time while you're doing it, and therefore it's going to take 3 to 4 years.
Got it.
And the other thing I just want to mention is, you have the core courses that is required, as dictated by the BBS, which is our governing board here in California. So there's like diagnosis and assessment, ethics and the law, human development, courses like that, group dynamics. We also have a lot of fun classes. Being a therapist, learning how to be a therapist, we do somatic psychology in our program, transpersonal psychology in our program, along with some of the traditional requirements that you have to have. So you can learn Hakomi, you can learn somatic experiencing, you can do a creative expression in a lot of our classes. In fact, we also have a creative expression certificate you can get, which is, how much is that in addition to?
It's actually only 2 courses in addition, because most of the rest of the work is integrated into your regular coursework.
So if you want to come to grad school and do art, come to Sofia. right? If you want to do, we do poetry. You know, on all of these are filtered through the clinical lens, right? So you learn these things and how to do them in your practice clinically, which gives you a much broader toolbox than a lot of other universities who just kind of stick to the traditional concepts. So that's one advantage of coming here too.
So maybe I'll talk a little bit about how I integrate some of that into my practice. So when I'm working with, for example, a teenager, teenagers often don't like to sit across from you and talk to you. Now some do, but most often they would rather be doing something. So then I'm going to look at what can we do together that allows that person, that teenager, to feel comfortable with me, so that I can learn about their lives and they can witness. It's a process of witnessing the person and reflecting, holding up that mirror Jen talked about. But sometimes I can witness what they draw, what they do, sometimes even just playing a game. How do they play? And then I can witness that back to them. And in the process of that, I learn about how this person, how this teenager relates to people, relates to me, maybe relates to their family, maybe how they think about themselves. Do they think they're good at this? Do they think they're awful at this? So I start learning about those beliefs they have that may be helping them or damaging them. So we use, we apply these creative things, play especially with children, art. I use a sand tray, which is a box of sand with little figures that people can put in to kind of explore how they feel about something. We use all of these tools integrated with talk therapy to help people express their experience, and so that we can witness it back to them, and that makes it possible for the client to explore what's going on.
Yeah, it's really a lot about mind, body, and spirit integration. I mean, that's how we learn to be therapists in this program, and that's what we do for our clients. And if something's off with the mind, usually something's going to be off with the body and the spirit. And if something's off with the body, something's off with the mind and the spirit. They just kind of go hand in hand. So you learn a little bit more of alternative assessment tools here, in addition to just the traditional diagnosis and assessment, the DSM. We have the Enneagram, which I consider an alternative kind of transpersonal assessment tool, which helps us see the greater whole person who comes into our office. And yes, maybe they're struggling with depression or anxiety or a behavioral issue, but there's a whole person there, and there's usually a positive intention to why that they're experiencing what they're experiencing as negative into their life. So I like to look at them and try to figure that out, but remind them of their strengths as well and who they are out in the world. Yeah.
So our program has a transpersonal arc of core transpersonal courses: creative expression, mindfulness, transpersonal theory and literature, where we look at the research basis for the kinds of interventions we're going to teach you, and Aikido, which is helps us. Jen talked about how the mind and the soul are reflected in the body. So Aikido helps you explore your own body and how you move. But it also, Aikido is about relating to a person who may be aggressive towards you, but changing that energy so that rather than one of you getting injured, you can both resort and move together. It's really not about, it's very different from some of the other martial arts, because it's not about injuring the person who's attacking you. It's about shifting the energy so that neither of you needs to attack, because you're both safe to be together. And that shift that we can do in Aikido using our bodies is the same kind of shift that we're often going to do with our clients in therapy. And so it's really helpful to learn how to move that energy with our body and then take that into the mental spiritual realm. We do have, I think Sue-Ann McKean, our Aikido teacher, calls it non-falling Aikido. So she's developed a version of Aikido that is more friendly to a wide variety of bodies. Every once in a while we do have a student who really can't take Aikido, and then we offer them the chance to do something else that works with their body. So I don't want to think don't want anybody to think you have to be an athlete to take this degree. I'm not an athlete. I took non-falling Aikido. We were fine.
So I was just thinking of how Aikido really helps with some of those court order clients who really don't want to be there, right? And they're gonna like resist you at every turn, and it's a great resource to have in your toolbox to help with them. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have the transpersonal arc that those core courses are then followed by other courses that, for example, Jen mentioned poetry therapy. Sometimes we have improvisational skills. courses in different psychotherapeutic skills like Jungian psychotherapy or Hakomi, which is a somatic therapy where you pay attention to how your client's body changes in relation to their emotions. Dream work, yeah.
Dream work.
So those are some of the things that are in the transpersonal arc. And then the other thing is the required courses, like assessment. We teach them from a transpersonal lens. So yes, we're going to teach you everything you know to pass your clinical exam. And we're also going to teach you how to use all of that in a transpersonal whole person context. So it's a both and.
And I think we're the only university that has a dojo, right? It's just right down the hall. And if you're in the residential program or if you come here for low res intensives, you'll have your class in the dojo. And that's really special and unique to Sofia to incorporate that as part of your training to get your therapeutic stance from an Aikido perspective.
So, do we want questions now?
Yeah.
Do we have time for questions? We'll have questions.
A bunch of questions.
Oh,
I'll
great.
probably just ask one or two and then.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be here. Yes.
So, yeah, maybe a basic question is, do you have a brochure of the MACT and also sort of that states who's the faculty, what books are you going to read, what's going to be the exact curriculum for the 2 years or the 4 years?
So the website?
The website has the curriculum and the faculty. We don't actually have a brochure right now, I don't think.
Because
There was
I
one last
told-
year, but I haven't seen it this year.
I was told some of it is not current, so on the
Okay.
website. So I'm just wondering if I could get the current list
Of courses.
of courses, books, and faculty.
Yeah, books we don't have a set list. We have a few courses where we require a particular textbook, but often the textbook is at the discretion of the professor who's teaching that course. So they're going to look at, when a professor's teaching a course, they're going to look at the objectives for that course and how they relate to the program objectives. They're also going to look at their unique skill set, and they're going to pick a set of texts that address that union between what they are good at and have experience in, and how to use that to address your objectives. So they have a lot of discretion in picking their texts based on
And
that.
in terms of the courses, you would point me to the website for now, and it's current?
Yes.
Yeah.
The list
Well,
of courses
you
is
have
current.
and you have a list with you.
I actually have a list with me. I can give you something to take home today, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So I say it's 90 units or it's 96 units if you take both tracks, both the MFT and the clinical counselor tracks. So it's a 90 quarter unit program.
Are the course descriptions in the catalog?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and also, we didn't really talk much, but in the last year of your program, whether it's the 2-year or the 3-year program, you'll do a practicum where you're actually working with clients while also participating in a related class here at the university or online if you're distance. You can, if you're not living in the Bay Area, then you find a practicum site where you live, and then we coordinate with that site, so you don't have to move here to do that part.
So around that, like
Mhm.
how involved is the college in helping us find the internships or the practicum? Because some colleges are extremely involved in that process and some are not.
I would say we're kind of medium. There's a course to help called pre-practicum where you develop the skills you need to do a job search in this career and learn about what the practicum is about. That's taught by our clinical director, and then our clinical director also supports your search process and interfaces with your site once you have one. And one option for doing the practicum is, of course, also to be at our counseling center.
In Palo Alto.
Yes.
Right here on campus, next building over.
So if you live here, we actually are very well resourced with all the agencies in the area and who meets the practicum requirements.
I live in East Bay.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we have a lot of sites in
There's
Bay.
a lot of sites in the East
And you're
Bay.
connected in a way that it
Yes.
really
We've had
find-
students at those sites before, so often we know the staff. Yeah.
Yes.
And are these paid internships? Or?
It's a mix. Some are paid and some are unpaid.
If you're specifically looking for a paid internship, I consider myself a little bit of an expert on who offers paid and non-paid internships. I had to have a paid internship. I didn't have, a choice. I'm working, supporting myself, so that was important to me. Some people, they can work maybe a different job and earn their living, and then have an internship above and beyond that, and that works for them. So,
Right. So while you were a student, you were getting a paid internship?
yes.
And I have more questions, but we can.
Anyone else
Is
have
anyone else
questions?
interested in these questions, or yeah? maybe we could meet afterwards in the lounge, and I'll be in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions?
How does your program compare with other programs that say CIIS or JFK or NOVA?
That's a good question.
Well, you're a graduate of JFK, so
I
you might
am.
be more qualified to answer that than I am. I graduated here.
I like to think of ourselves as kind of like sister schools, kindred spirits. You know, what's happening. Integral studies is sort of what they own as the word in San Francisco. JFK, we call it transpersonal.
Holistic.
Yeah, JFK is holistic, and Sofia is transpersonal. So there's a lot of overlap. And all of us are trying to accomplish the same thing, to incorporate that mind, body, and spirit stance into traditional therapy and psychology. Some of it depends on where you want to live, where you want to go, right? If you want to live in the East Bay or San Francisco, CIIS or JFK could be more of a choice for you if you want to be in a residential program. If you want to live in the South Bay, JFK has a satellite campus down here as well. However, as far as being able to attend school all online in a low residency format, I believe Sofia kind of holds the unique market in that.
And also, I think we're the only one with a 2-year degree. But so I want to say a little bit more about differences, because integral psychology is a little different from transpersonal psychology, is a little different from holistic psychology. So integral psychology really integrates the principles of yoga into their work. And here we're integrating the principles of Aikido, and we're integrating the mind-body-spirit relationship. It's similar, but it's not exactly the same. So it's partly about what flavor works for you and matches how you think. And also, it's not cheap to go to graduate school and get a degree. So you want to think about what's the best fit for you. For some people, getting out in 2 years is really important, or being able to live wherever they live and not have to live here is very important. So that can be, a factor. Yeah.
I had a question specifically about the online program.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a lot of the transpersonal realm is experiential
Yes.
versus conceptual, and I'm kind of curious, how can we get that with an online program?
Okay, so
I know,
there's
friends at CIS, they do the residential, but they just want to immerse themselves experientially in this whole.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to address that because I've been teaching in that program since the first quarter. Part of it is at the intensive. The intensives are 10 days twice a year, and you come here and you're with your cohort and with other cohorts in the program doing that experiential piece here. So for example, when we teach counseling skills, those listening skills that Jen was talking about, that course is primarily taught here. Only one unit of it is online. And in that unit, you read the textbook and discuss it. Right, so you learn the theory online, which, as David was saying earlier, is a really good way to learn theory. It can be really efficient to learn theory online instead of in the classroom. But the experiential pieces are often at the intensives. So that's one thing. The second thing is we build experiential stuff into the online classroom. So for example, you might go and do something in your community and then report back. So when I teach multicultural counseling, for example, working across cultures, I ask students to go someplace in their own community where they don't fit in and experience what is that like for them to be in a place where they don't fit in. Where, for example, if they're white, they go someplace maybe if somebody who's a white Christian might go to a Vietnamese Buddhist temple, you're not going to fit in. What is it like to be there? How do you feel when you don't fit in? Someone who's lived in this culture as a minority already knows that experience. So, but you can explore a different dimension of it. And then we report back. We report that back to our other classmates so we can all learn from each other. So that's a way to integrate experiential work online.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.